One of the reasons that I became really excited about space, this was even before high school, back in the early Apollo days, the first Apollo landing. I was watching that, I was all of 3 years old with my mom, and she was trying to explain to me how these were the first people to ever set foot on the moon. I asked her in my young wisdom if she had ever been to the moon. She tried to explain, well, these are the first. No, I haven't been there. So I promised her at that point that I would someday take her to the moon, doing my best to keep my promise.
He called excitedly to tell me about ULA having been awarded 4 of the 6 flights in the next page of lunar exploration, and said, "Mom, I'm a step closer to fulfilling my promise to you as a 4-year-old." And that was just 5 days before he passed away. I like to think that perhaps he's wandering the moon.
Bernard was our chief rocket scientist, and he was absolutely instrumental in all of our future technologies.
Bernard is just a wonderful person and energetic.
He was the energy in the room and full of ideas.
For me, it was just inspirational being around him. He just seemed to think he could do most anything, you know? And he'd come in a room and he'd convince others of that.
He was just a genius. He was such a brilliant guy and so creative.
Well, Bernard Kutter really was the driving force behind the LOFTID mission.
He dreamed up how this mission could work with NASA.
LOFTID is really cool.
It's an inflatable heat shield, so we can deflate it and fold it up.
But then inflates into a primary structure.
That will slow down a payload as it re-enters. And ultimately, this technology is going to help ULA reuse engines and help NASA land on Mars in the future.
Well, Bernard really brought all this together.
Without Bernard Kutter, this mission really could not have happened.
NASA and United Launch Alliance are dedicating the low Earth orbit flight test of an inflatable decelerator, or the LOFTID mission, in honor of Bernard Kutter.
It's quite an honor to have Bernard's name on this mission. And part of it is because of his enthusiasm about this mission. But I really think it's bigger than that. It's his enthusiasm and his influence across the whole industry.
He was somebody who was always envisioning ways to get humans into outer space.
And we can see how one person with vision, hard work, and just enthusiasm can make a huge difference.
His legacy is in the ideas that he's been planting for the last decade and will get developed for the next 20, 30 years. Bernard planted all those seeds.